Okay. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode one of Built by Blake. We have a really special guest, Archie. Archie's a really cool colleague, friend, and brother of mine. We've been in conversation for several years because of different business ventures that we've had, different growth periods, and just like all around through friends of friends. So I'm really excited with the whole focus of Built by Blake. One thing is to inspire and uplift people to start their own brand while also showcasing how we build our own brands as well. So what better way than on top of just talking about myself than to build and bring somebody in like Archie, who has built several businesses but led him to his overall purpose and what his why is right now. So to give you a little bit of background on Archie today, Archie was a was the co-founder of a brand called Wear Brims, where Brims had really amazing products from different pieces of headwear and was in different high-end luxury spaces and retailers, did a lot of championing for events, and has done tons and tons of different accomplishments, from having different showcases and showrooms within New York City during New York Fashion Week, just from overall all impact. And seeing somebody with those types of accolades and accomplishments, it doesn't just end there. So he took his talents and founded a brand called Brain Love, which we're going to talk about today and jump about the overall conversation of how he built it to what it is today, and just really the thought process and diving deep on what the foundation is of a good brand and what he hopes to have in the future. So, with all due respect, I'll pass it over to you, Archie. If you could just give a little bit more background about like what your pivoting and defining moments were, and we'll just
Yeah.
get right in.
No, man. Well, first of all, pleasure always like be able to connect, man, be able to build through conversation, fellowship. Again, Archie Clay III, founder, CEO of Brain Love, is a fashion brand focused on changing the narrative around mental health and wellness within our communities. Um, that's our perspective. That's what we want to build. We realize that there's a challenge in honestly what mental health is, but also getting people to value where it truly involved and the best version of themselves and really reach their full potential and the success and happiness and joy. So we're building something unique, disruptive. We're still building, we're still growing. You know, we use our success, but we're super excited to be in this space and be able to make impact through fashion.
Yeah, I love that, man. So, speaking of impact with fashion, I think a lot of times people think solely monetarily, or they think about like the amount of products that you've sold in terms of that. So, to jump in, what does impact mean to you as far as being a brand owner? And then holistically, what was that defining moment on creating Brain Love, as far as what type of impact that you want to have and what you guys are currently doing to show that form of impact right now?
No, for sure, man. Impact for me, man, is just able to change people's lives, right? I think we're in a time now where a lot's happening from political to just life and day life. People are trying to figure out, you know what I mean? And I think first and foremost, for me, it's just grateful to be able to do this again. You know what I mean? And I think that even with where we're at, there was a perspective of impact through conflict. And I think in this space right here, it's getting people to see value in themselves. Because I know how difficult it can be to be confident in yourself, um, to be able to pick your boots up and be able to do it again, be able to pivot and make things happen. So I think impact is really getting people to see value in themselves and how they can really make change in life. And that's something I'm really looking forward to, is just really getting people to see that they can really reach their full potential and reach their dreams. But it takes the mental and the mindset to shift in order for us to really reach our full potential and what that looks like. And I think Brain Love is a space where we're leveraging fashion and the confidence around fashion to be able to do that. And we're excited. You know, we have a meeting every Tuesday and we're brainstorming. Right, we're still figuring out. We're still trying to figure out what it takes to build a social impact fashion brand, because it's something a little different. I don't know anybody within my field that has done it in the space that we're doing it when it comes to the mental health and the wellness and the holistic thought process and the mindset around that. And it's exciting, you know what I mean? Because I think that You see so many people. I'll say this: you look at social media and you look at how that's impacting how people think and how we push forward and how we motivate ourselves, and it's a lot of negativity around that. You know what I mean? And we can't get and be motivated and inspired by negativity. And I think that to have a brand that's really focused on oneself and our customer self isn't powerful. It's powerful. What I mean, we say that we have these two terms where we say, your evolution starts with you, and we truly believe that. I think in order for you to make change in your life, whatever that looks like, I think it's spiritual, but I think it's also mentally, right? But you can have community, you can have people around you, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to make that change for yourself. You know what I mean? And the second thing I would say is that humans are our stakeholders, meaning that our community are our stakeholders. Like, we want to create something that's impactful for them, right? Making sure that they have the value that they need to make change in their life. And we hope that our storytelling, our impact, our fabrics, our materials, and how we produce the quality products plays a role in making an impact for them as a community, as a world.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about like what you're doing is because like when you look at the fashion industry, there's so many different layers as far as how people are able to tap into that market, right? When you look at fashion, it's just already from like the price point you have, whether it's considered like luxury or not, what the target retailers are and everything like that. And then as far as inclusivity and exclusivity that comes between it. But the ultimate thing that ties like everything together is the way that fashion makes you feel. And it's so interesting seeing like all these fashion houses where they have like new creative directors, creative direction and stuff like that. But it's interesting seeing like the creative directors have a brand's affinity and take it to different fashion houses. And I love how your origin of what you did with your previous company builds the affinity, but it's like the foundation of the brand,
Mhm.
especially when you look at like some of these fashion houses right now. It's like they hire new creative directors, but once that creative director leaves, the brand is kind of not doomed per se, but they're in a space where they have to start completely fresh, whereas you have a company that is
Absolutely.
built on the foundation of like experiences. It's built on the fact of feeling, because I think that that's the heart of fashion, right? Like you put on a fit, whether like I have on just an all black outfit, it's just like a hoodie and stuff. It's still like a representation of myself, from the
Right.
materials you choose, from the fabrics, the fit, the cut. It could be like a very lazy outfit and I could feel lazy that day. It could be like a very high effort outfit that I have that doesn't seem like it, but that can be a representation of it. So I love how like you're saying that, especially with when it comes down to that. And I just want to know what your experience has been since you are. I know that you were saying that you think you're one of the first people to do it. I would say that you are, and I've seen that countless times just because like the representation that I make sure I exemplify with my company, it takes it a step further from the mental health aspect of it. But I guess like what are some of the things that you have personally experienced when implementing the mental health component by tapping that into the fashion industry as well? How's that been for you?
Man, I think that it's a journey, right? Because I think as we're in the space of figuring out how we want to make our true impact, how we want to show up for our community, how we want to show up for the world in real time with our lives, right? I just started about therapy. And at the end of the day, it's like I need to be clear, right, in order to like, make the best decisions to be able to make impact for the customers that we want to impact. You know what I mean? And I'm in this journey with myself constantly, right? How do I become better? How do I evolve, right? You know what I mean? And what I'm also realizing that, man, I was just telling me and my friend was just talking about it today. Is just like only God makes these choices for you. You know what I'm saying? And of course, it's based on what you believe, right? But for me, my spirituality has played a major role in my journey, right? God has brought me to where we are with Brain Love, and I'm giving everything else to Him. All I can do is be present in the moments and really take every day of like, how can I get 1% better every day? Right? How do I show up better every day? Right? You know what I'm saying? If I have a perspective or a thought that comes to my mind, it's my obligation to do it in that moment. Right? It's not about saying, let me wait. right? Because sometimes you and I'm a product of it, right? In the beginning, when we started Brain Love, I'm like, I did this before. Like I ain't gotta work as hard. I don't gotta do none of this anymore. Like I don't have to do the same thing I did in the beginning. Yes and no, right? Because there's gonna be certain things that are gonna come easy. So certain things that's not. It's a different idea, a different concept. You know what I mean? So you can't your past does dictate your future, but sometimes your future can dictate your past. At the same time, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like my past is going to play a role in how I make decisions, but my future or what I want to be, that what I want it to be, I need to look at that and say, okay, cool. What decisions can I make now to impact the future? You know what I mean? Like for us, we are looking to exit. Like we're building to exit because I learned what where Brims is that nothing's promised, regardless of how much love you put into it, regardless of how much sweat you put into it, regardless of how much blood you put into it, no matter how much sleep you don't get, all that they don't care. None of that matters. Once it's done, you can't get none of that back. You know what I mean? So my perspective is different around how I'm building this brand. Like I'm not saying that we will exit, but I'm saying I'm building it to be exitable, right? Because at the end of the day, none of this is promised. Fashion can cycle anytime. It's a full circle moment. Like brands come in and out. You know what I mean? And it's a little harder in small brands, right? In small businesses, because at the end of the day, it's like there comes capital, there comes sustainability, there comes keeping it consistent. It's a lot of things that come into play. So I'll say all to say that, man, is just like me in real time of making sure that my mentor and I'm paying attention, but also being an expert. Like if I'm gonna really push this narrative and this thought process of a holistic living, mental health, and I'm saying all these things align back to a better life, then I have to show you too. And I'm telling you, it's great, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like if I take the pressure away from myself and say, hey, God, like, I'm just gonna do the work. I'm giving all the meetings, the opportunities, the retail relationships, I'm giving that all to you. And if something doesn't happen, then it means it's not for it to happen. That doesn't mean that I'm not gonna have a human reaction sometimes. It's like, man, like I really wanted that. But at the same time, it's just like I have to understand that God truly has a bigger. He's testing me. He's I don't know whatever he's doing. Right, he is the one that's holding this ship. He's keeping me above water. He's making sure I'm steering down this journey. You know what I mean? All I'm doing is making sure that I'm putting myself in a position to win, and that's with learning, growing, and evolving every single day.
It's like you have to sit in a state of emotion before you're able to move forward with things, because as a business owner, you're really trying to figure out like what can get automated and what can get like done, but there are certain things that you can't automate, right? Like especially when it comes down to there needs to be like a sense of human touch from whatever you're creating to like the business relationships that you have. You got to put the time, effort, love, and work into it. When we were doing a lot of research and development back in 2023, 2024, what I was doing was I was trying to figure out different ways to like push out and do like batch content creating. And like batch content creating for us was how can we get like 2 posts a day every single day up on all social medias, and like we were just pushing stuff out. And then my social media manager, who I'm working like very heavily with, she's like, yeah, I could post stuff up as much as you want me to, but I need time to actually like feel, like I actually need time to like have idle time to be able to be in tune with what's going on. And there's different things like the heart of my brand started with the murder of George Floyd, right? We wanted to give back and help the community that was around us with everything that's prevalent. However, racism and everything that's happening within the world is still prevalent, right? Like there's different forms of it, there's different forms of expression, there's things that happen. And as we create these different pipelines and programs to like combat that, new problems arise. And
Right.
that's the part that I think that a lot of times it's really interesting, especially from like your lens of what you're talking about, is that there's the part of figuring out what's present, which is your current self, is like, what is my current self? And then what do I want my future self to be? How do I get myself to be in that space? But then also, as you are focused on your present, there are future problems that you're going to experience that will then affect like your designs. It's going to affect the people you work with, your business relations. Because if everything was so copy and paste, there would be no need for innovation. People would just be like, you know what, this works for me, this is fine. And like what you're doing is so dope because you're really, really diving into like the fact of like what a future brand is looking for and like validating that overall impact and stuff like that. So like
Yeah,
that
and
leads to the
I
next.
like that too. You know, I think it's challenging yourself. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's putting yourself at the pinnacle of what you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like I was just telling my business manager, I was saying, man, we built something special, right? We created the foundation. Now let's really build it. You know what I mean? Let's build it. I know it's cliche to say, brick by brick, but I mean that's really what it is because you're really creating the foundation and then you're building the house. And now, once you build the house, you got to put the furniture in, make it look nice, make it look good. You know what I mean? So I look at it like that. Like we have the foundation. Now we're building it. You know what I mean? And let's really brainstorm and think through how do we create a $1 billion company? Like we're not putting ourselves in the box saying that we're just building a brand. No, we're building a $1 billion brand company. If Poppies can do it, they can start where they started and get sold by Pepsi and now sell for 1.7 bill. We can do the same thing. You know what I mean? So it's alleviating that block, the mental block, which a lot of times us as African American brands is that we put ourselves in a box based on what's in our bank account. Because we have a certain amount of money in our bank account, that's only what we can think about. We gotta think in the moment. Yes, okay, we gotta make sure that we're doing what we're doing to scale and grow. But you gotta also have a delusion and say, hey, we can be that big brand. No, we miss it, we miss it. But if you never think that way and never put yourself on that pedestal, what are we doing? Like, what are we building this for? And I think that's one thing I want to challenge brands and people that are entrepreneurs and founders. Let's think big, but also got to be honest with ourselves. Got to have a product that allows us to think big. Because if your product is not big, then it's not going to be big.
Yeah, and it's planting the seeds. It's planting the seeds for sure because like to your point, I saw somebody this past weekend was posting a sermon from like one of the ministries that they watch like on YouTube, and during the time it was like they had a message, and in the actual message the pastor's wearing one of your designs. And I thought it's cool because like it's not the fact of when you do like celebrity seating and you put like a celebrity in a shirt or like anything like that's its moment in itself, but it's when something is just integrated into like the message in itself that exemplifies whatever you're trying to do as if it's regular. Whereas if you were to watch a movie and there's a scene of somebody eating food, they got to eat the food. Like you don't have to
Right,
advertise and say like this is the special dish that's there. It's like they're
right,
eating a meal and then somebody's like watching it like actually that kind of looks good, you know what I'm saying? So I think that that's the value add that you have when it comes down to like your designs, and like seeing that is that it's not the message of brain love. It's the message, that full seed that you've planted that manifests into that are these different pillars that are people that you're not necessarily like, you don't have to be best friends with somebody for it to be something that message is sent across. And whether you know that person or you don't know it, the person that eventually gets the message out that has shared it is so far from you that that sphere of
right,
influence gets your message across beyond that. And I think that we're really taught to be successful is to get it like one sphere or one like circle of influence outside of like the group that you know, which could be like if your goal is to get into a retailer, is to get into the store, but we're not necessarily accustomed to and then what? And then what is that missing component of like if you get into a Bloomingdale's, how can I get them to purchase several seasons? How can I do different capsules? How can I get them to continue to purchase? Because like that accolade of getting in is already historical, but when we're talking about history, we're talking about like legacy, and we're
right.
talking about generations to get the messaging across. So that really just goes into really me wondering what are some things that you're actively doing outside of the things that I've like seen and come across as like I'm pretty familiar with everything you're doing, but I know that you talked about throwing a lot of darts at the board. But like what are some things that you're doing as far as trying to make a difference, and like some things and initiatives that you're testing out for your brand that don't necessarily tie to immediate financial return, but are that
Yeah,
the seeds you're planting for your future for legacy?
yeah, man. One of the main things that we are curating and focusing on right now is our impact, and through conversation and through events and curation of that, what that looks like, right? So we've been doing a lot of events around different topics and conversations, and really diving into the realness of these conversations, right? And challenging people, right? I think that's one thing that we've been doing pretty well at, is really having these conversations and really thinking into those, drifting into those panel conversations, which people normally do, right? I think the next step is like, curating. Right, one thing we're working on right now is curating content that let curating content that leans into that, right, in a raw way, right? So bringing in real people, bringing in people that are at the peak of their success, in the medium of their success, in the beginning of their success, right? To we call it the therapy talks, because the thought process of that is to be able to curate a conversation around that space, right? Not actually reenacting the space, but being in that space, right? But more important is like getting people to see power in the power of one tongue. They preach about it all the time, how powerful your tongue can be, and from a perspective of expressing yourself, being comfortable with being vulnerable, right? And being comfortable in expressing your thoughts, and hearing yourself, right? Hearing yourself say these things, but being one when you say them, right? And that's one thing that we've been really focused on, and bringing people in that are on that journey, but okay with expressing the failures, the challenging times, the fears, right? Because what I believe was happening is that sometimes when we look at these podcasts, or we look at these different things that happen on social, we're only seeing one lens of it. And I want people to see both lenses of it. I want them to see the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen next, because there is uncertainty of knowing. Like with retail, there's an uncertainty of not knowing what's next. You can get in, but that doesn't mean you're going to stay in, right? So it's just really going through those perspectives and thought process of what that looks like. So that's therapy talks. We're working on this new podcast that we're going to launch probably next year. It's called The Art of Brilliance. And what I really want to do around that is really give people the tools of what it truly means to be brilliant. And we're not saying brilliant is smart. Brilliant is what you got. What are you doing to put yourself in position to grow and evolve every single day, to reach your full potential, and whatever that looks like for you, that's your sense of brilliance, right? And of course, one of the main things that we're working on right now, and it's really not tying into um, it ties into impact, but it's really more on the product side. We understand that if we're gonna be this brand, Brain Love, and we're gonna be a brand that's focused on mental health and wellness and holistic living, then we have to make sure that we're focusing on the fabrics and the fibers of our product. So from a sustainability perspective, and not just sustainability, but also natural materials, right? We've been been doing a lot of research and paying attention to what polyester is doing to our bodies, and the plastics that are coming off the polyester that we don't even know is happening to us, going into our skins and our food and things of that nature, right? So doing our due diligence to be in that process and say, hey, like we're not there yet. Like we're paying attention to the fabric that we're utilizing right now, but we want to be better. We want to make sure that we have the cleanest products for our customers. Um, and that's the space, right? There's the space and trend, and the importance. People are changing. Like people are seeing value in what they're eating. That's why organic is something that's very, very important right now, even in the consumers, because people are saying, "Hey, like I want to make sure that I have clean food. I want to make sure that I'm putting clean things into my body." Same thing for clothing. Eventually, people are going to be like, "Why am I paying $1,000 for something that's polyester?" You know what I mean? So that's one thing that we're working on right now. We've had some other ideas of, uh, won't mention just yet, but we're working on some ideas around a couple of subscription ideas, what that looks like, and some other things in the future. So like we're really just we want to lean into this all the way, and by leaning into it all the way, it's being able to think about how do we make the best product that impacts our customers, but also impacts their bodies, their mindsets, and their brain health, right? To make sure that they're completely living a clean life. You know what I mean? And even people that might even be familiar with what that looks like. We want to want to put you into the energy. You know what I mean? And it's an ongoing process. Like we're not there yet. But we're constantly talking about it right now and brainstorming of how do we get there. And I think that's empowerment in a small brand. You could talk about it. You could bring the customer on the journey with you and say, hey, like we're teaching ourselves where this is new to us. Like we are new in the social impact space, in the sustainable space. And we say all the time, like we want to be the cooler version of Patagonia. We think Patagonia is super dope. You know what I mean? But I think what makes us special is that the clothing and the designs of our clothes gives us that cool factor. And like you can be cool, but also have alignment to sustainability, have alignment to a holistic lifestyle. Like, but also it's like how I look at it too is like if you want to be successful, in my mind, being successful aligns to doing things that put you in a position to be successful. And then for me, it's not just about money. I think that if you have clean mindset, clean body, all these things, they align back to getting the money. In my mind, you know what I mean? Correct me if I'm wrong, but uh, I think that if you put yourself in a good space, and I'm not sure people have ever read the book, How to Eat to Live, Elijah Muhammad, like he talks about that. You know what I mean? It's crazy that it's so crazy that I'm in this space because I grew up I grew up being taught that. You know what I mean? Like it's a full circle for me. Like it's just crazy that like I'm in this space, but I'm going back to my teachings of how I grew up.
Yeah, and I think that it's so layered that I think that a big responsibility as a brand owner is to you can just because you can save money in certain areas, you have to assess what the impact is going to be on the outside perspective and like the outside experience that comes to it. So, if you're creating shirts at a more affordable price and it may like cut the quality, but people will pay for it, does that make it right? And I think as a brand owner, you should have that obligation to your consumer, to your audience, to always want people to have the best version of whatever they want because that like defines customer service, right? Like when we were getting started and like what we were doing is like the first set of people that we ever hired were all people that focused on customer service, customer support. And like throughout the time, it's like I wanted to hit a specific price point for the consumer to be accessible. However, through the inception of like not only the designs, the feedback that other people are giving me, I'm like, this is what I want to do to improve. However, this is something you guys have not asked for yet, but I want to give that to you because as a customer, you deserve that. So, like, extending the return window for like products that people order and like just really like, yeah, we don't experience people complaining that the window is too short. We're just like, oh, I feel obligated to give that to somebody because like you want them to have that best experience. And it sounds like everything that you're doing is rooted in the best experience and best environment that you're around. Because if you look at like our counterparts and like you look at other people, they're always asking for the best version of whatever it is. It doesn't matter whatever it is. And even if you can't taste the difference, like I've watched a whole bunch of videos of people like drinking like wine and they can't tell the difference between like a cheap bottle of wine and a really expensive bottle of wine.
Right.
And then you go to like these expensive restaurants and stuff and people get a really expensive version of wine and they're not any crazy like wine tester like knows like the palate to take the taste. However, they want that experience, and I think that that's something that goes into us is that we should also like make sure that we are providing that as a brand, that is like no matter what the price point is, no matter what the accessibility is like to give it to people, to make sure that you're providing those outlets to other people because you see that a lot. And I think that we had an interesting conversation before that I do want you to kind of expand about is that aside from having the brand obligation, what do you think the obligation is for other outlets and stuff to continue to help uplift and service you for that as well? Because like when I think about it, I like know my experience as far as like people want to promote my business in a specific way. Like I get it. Like my products can be more like palatable would be the word that if it's marketed a specific way. However, that doesn't mean that's how I want it. Where do you see the landscape of a lot of these media outlets that are promoting and like what obligation do you think they have right now and where would you like to see them in the future? Because it sounds as if to me, you have been creating a lot of these different outlets from podcasts to like clean clothing to provide opportunities from like a consumer vantage point. of things that you're going to get the messaging out to people whether they request it or not. I'm going to get you cleaner clothes to people within the next 5 years, whether they know that these items are like killing people or not, because I owe that to you. But where do you think like media outlets serve in that purpose on? Where do you think they are, and what obligation do you think that they owe to their consumers and their audience as well that impacts your business?
Man, I think, man, we talked about this, man. I'm gonna be very honest. You know what I mean?
Please.
Yeah, bro. I think that it's time to the negativity got to stop, man. Like I just really like it's not only hurting us, it's hurting our youth too. You know what I mean? Because they're curating their palette and their perspective based on what they see. You know what I'm saying? And I think why we are different as millennials and our parents and our parents' is that of course we went through our own stuff and we have our own. No one's perfect. Let me just put that out there. But I think that we were blocked for so much. We were blocked from seeing a lot of stuff. So we were allowed to kind of have to create our own perspective based off of life, real life. You know what I'm saying? Like now it's based on what I see on social. And one thing I hate is just like we all these social media platforms are always talking about these relationships and these 50-50, like all these things that don't matter. You know what I'm saying? And you're putting these certain perspectives and thought process in these people's heads, and they're going back to real life and saying these things, and it's not how life do. It's really based on what you want it to be. You know what I mean? And it's just this perspective of negativity and only talking about like the bad things that are happening. You know what I mean? Versus talking about the positivities. And I think, and I know, like, me and my wife were talking about this yesterday, and I was talking to her about it, and I was just like, man, like, I just hate that this negativity is what wins. And she was like, that's what we want to, that's what we want to see. Now that's the problem. But I also think that based on how we've been trained is why we want to see it. I don't believe that if we were giving the right positivity over and over again, that our brain will basically charging it, like I guess receive that, and my mind will continue to flow like that. So this is how I put it. Like I'm just gonna use my life, right? Because of my mother and how my mother raised me, positivity, affirmation, confidence throughout my whole entire life. Like, but honesty too. I think I told you, like my mom was telling me, like, boy, you can't sing. Stick to what you do best, right? Giving you confidence in yourself to have confidence in real life, right? If I got negativity all the time, then I will have negativity that will push out. And I'll have to have somebody to help me reform my perspective to have a different thought process. Right. So I look at that as kind of a similar notion. It's like I receive what I see, right? Based on what I receive, that can impact who I am and how I react to certain things. Right. So being that social media and all these things are always pushing out constant negativity, I do believe that's what you're going to push out. You know what I mean? So I think it's just like there's nothing wrong with kind of having a balance, right? I know you as a media, but also it kind of goes with what we're talking about. Like if we're make if our goal is to make change, we're not making change by giving people negativity because we know it's going to impact them. Now we want to be honest. There's a difference being honest, but also intentionally pushing out negativity. It's a difference in telling a story that has negativity in it to give you the meats and bones of the perspective so you can make a judgment based on that. You know what I mean? So my perspective is that the shit gotta stop, bro. You know what I'm saying? I think that as me as a brand, I don't care if you tell my story or not. We gonna make this thing pop regardless because we know that this shit is bigger than excuse me, person. It's bigger than what y'all got going on over there in that publication, what y'all got going over at this platform. Because at the end of the day, we trying to impact more than what y'all trying to do. You know what I mean? And we covered, you know what I'm saying? God is the one steering this ship at the end of the day. And until God tell me otherwise, then it's what it is. You know what I mean? So for me, it's that I just believe that I think it's time to challenge these and we always talk about, even say one more thing too, is like we talk about even this whole boycott thing. It's just like that shows you how powerful us together and what we can do. So if there are certain brands, and I do believe that you got to show your power, you got to show what you're capable of doing, right? If you see that there are certain brands that are making impact, why not come in and say, yo, like, we want to help amplify you. Let's put you in, let's get you a story, let's push your narrative so we can help create. Because media and PR can help create billion-dollar brands, especially in this day and time now where social media is a way to market and get directly to your customers. So
So
you can't tell me you are a platform that's focused on enhancing black businesses, but you're charging at the same time. Now I know it's a business, but at the same time, it's just that we didn't ask y'all to go into media. Media is supposed to tell stories. You know what I mean? So anytime I have somebody that comes in and says we have a conversation around telling our story, and they say, "Oh, well, it's $500," it's like if we were popping, you would tell our story. But we believe we're popping, and I guess our story is not strong enough for you. You know what I mean? So I look at it as all right, cool, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that because everybody has their own perspective of how they do their business. I can't control your business and how you do your business and your business model. But what I can tell you is that I'll see you soon.
yeah, and it yeah, I, when I think of there's a lot to it. I think of when I was in college and when I was registering for classes, the first thing you do is you look up the class, the professor, and then we had rate my professor. Whenever anybody had a good professor, they are not going on rate my professor to say how great of an experience that they had with the professor was. You go on rate my professor to say who is somebody to avoid. When I moved into my new apartment, when we were looking at different places of like where I wanted to be, what area and everything like that, I would go on Yelp, Google Maps, and I'd look it up. I never expected to see positive reviews. It's only the negative ones. This is like bad parking. This is bad visitation. This is like not safe. Never positive. When you go to restaurants, there's a mixture of both, right? So like a local mom and pop is not going to have the same as a franchise, right? And even like franchises, depending on like the price points of it, are going to have different ratings. However, there's value in the thought process that people have, and I think that there is a need for the conversation of people to have, and that's why I think that it's the point of what you're saying where yeah, we can't control their business, but I do believe that there needs to be like a level of accountability of like, okay, if you're not going to provide that outlet for people at a free cost, there needs to be something that can offset that in an authentic way.
Right.
I think that I have problems with people like say that, all right, well, we're going to charge you for this, but like there's no middle ground between like somebody that's developing, because you can have like there's some amazing designers that are like young that haven't had opportunities, anything like that. They just need a platform to get there, but that doesn't mean they need to pay for it, because like if that's the case, that money is like now we're talking about what's the best value for your dollar instead of like what is the creative lens of it. So I think that to your point, when you look at these outlets that are trying to charge, create like an open column of people that can submit ideas and like vet the ideas and let the community rank those ideas, and those can be developing stories.
Right.
If you're popping and like you see like this is going to be like a really dope idea, get everybody to go vote on that article, and like that article can now become something, and it's a contributing article,
Right.
which is interesting because there's so many contributing authors to these sites. But then when it comes down to like pitching, it now becomes like a plight of advertisement. And it's so interesting, like especially when you have like when you come in the perspective of like boycotting to your conversation. I think that boycotting is so interesting because there's like so many reasons why people do, but like what is the authentic and right way to do it? And I've even seen like people start businesses out of response to like boycotting, like instead of saying like this is we need to shop black, so here's like a retail where it's all black owned businesses. But on the back end, it's the same thing because now you're charging those black businesses to list as a business for them, to then not even be considered like, all right, this is a list of a directory of these businesses. Here's the ones that have paid. And
Right.
like that goes into like the whole separation component where it's like I think that people are monetizing negativity. People are monetizing and using monetization as a form of priority instead of like impact as something that people want. And that to me doesn't necessarily make sense because like if somebody's pumping a whole bunch of money into something and it's ugly, it's still gonna be ugly. Like you know what I'm saying? So like if somebody is pushing something and you've got like the lens of saying that maybe somebody doesn't have the same amount of money as Louis Vuitton to go make like a full collection that comes out of it, but they can make some custom pieces. Like I saw somebody make this really dope like 3D printed like magnetic hair clips. Like it's
Uh-huh.
hard. Like the designs are super hard, but the capital she needs to like print that in bulk and do that, she doesn't have that.
Right.
So being in that space of like, can she get her idea out to other people to see it? But if she had somebody that pushed it, you have the foundation of companies like Kickstarter and like all these other ones. Those platforms could work interchangeably to be able to like fund those brand ideas. So if you had like a Kickstarter that injected into a website like Essence, right? You can get into like an editorial where it says like, here's a business that needs some like investment. Here's how you can back it. That could be like a new avenue. And like word to Essence, because I think that they do a good job as far as like highlighting and celebrating people and like that aspect of it. I think that when you're breaking it down, like those are opportunities that like a lot of editorials are like not necessarily doing outside of them, right? Like you're
Right.
seeing those spaces, and like I also think that a consumer is somebody that's buying something, and like the need for them to buy something is different, like different purposes for everything. So like somebody could buy like a shirt because they need a shirt to wear, and then now you get into the price point of like, okay, well now we're spending over $35 for a shirt.
Right.
Is it because I need something to put on my body, or is it an investment piece? Of the investment piece, what is it actually going to? How can you break it down? And it gives a sense of confusion to the customer on why they're supporting, but it also gives them confusion as far as like what they're fighting for and what they're advocating for. And that's the part that I think that media controls it, and the
Right.
media aspect of it is very challenging because I just remembered I was in such like a weird place about a month ago, and it was because of the content I was digesting. It was like every article is like negative and negative and negative. It's just like, damn, we just can't catch a break. But I had to switch platforms to get ones that were like, even the content I was ignoring, I would get served more of it in like a
Yeah.
different
You
angle.
gotta
So if I don't want,
curate.
yeah,
Curate.
like
Yeah. I
yeah, it
got
would
to
get
that
curated.
point. I don't want to hear the platform's relationship every single day.
Yeah, every single day. So I switched. I switched over to like Substack. I switched over to like Threads and like changing different platforms to like get served different types of content. Because like originally when you were on Twitter a couple years ago, like a good practice for Twitter is to like also follow people whose like ideologies you don't necessarily prescribe to, so you can have a
Mhm.
balance of like what's a bias, what's not a bias, and what information is not. But then it just gets
Right.
like with the abundance of information, it just becomes so negative that like I had to start sourcing that and getting to deep dives. That I think it's important that these editorials, these magazines, like people that are promoting it, they have an avenue aside from being like held accountable. They have an opportunity to really like push people in a direction of really succeeding. Because like when we got our first press was on Exo Nicole, and that was like a brand started
Oh
just
yeah.
by like a person, right? Like she started that and like built it up, and like then it went from Exo Nicole to like you have a company like Harper's Bazaar, like big in fashion, picking us up because of these other outlets. So you just need that initial chance. But the power in media outside of like the numbers game is that I wish that they looked at things that same way, and I hope that people can find a sense of accountability, because like when I say that I boycott something, I truly mean it. Like I don't kind of boycott something, it's like I'm done with it. And I also am like very big on proponents of like these are business relationships I very much so am like part of and not. We say we don't shop there anymore, we don't. We don't kind of shop there, and we don't choose Monday, Wednesday, Fridays,
Right.
but I also understand the environment I live in, right? Like somebody in the middle of like a desolated city only has few options to shop certain places. It gets very
Right.
challenging for them to say like we no longer prescribe to that. However, I don't fake the funk, right? Like if I'm gonna say I'm not gonna boycott something, I'm not about to say that if I know I'm about to like sneak in. It's like sneak eating at night. Like you're not about to. Why am I not losing weight? It's like you catch me at night eating 5,000 calories. Like yeah, you know.
Right? You
So
about
I
to,
think that having that holistic approach of like both ends, it's an interesting perspective because I do see people like see these things because like when you are looking at inventors of the brand and like what you were saying earlier of like I did it once, I could do it again. It's like yes but no. It's like yeah you can because you now know it's like all right, the people you save time with, the people that you didn't know who you need to reach out to, you now can pinpoint that.
right.
Whereas like you save yourself time, but those same people might not be the people that you reach out to anymore. So I'm very very excited to see like where that's going to take us and like how that's going to be with that. So I wanted to dive deeper into actually your overall design process and like your design process of the people as well as that. Can you walk me through your brands? Your brand is obviously owned by you and you control the designs that you have. But can you talk through the process of creating designs that are also not adaptable, but are also sold in other retail spaces, the visions of the retail spaces you see, and the difference between like creating a piece that may not necessarily be for this retailer, but it's for you guys, and how you go about like creating the products that you have with some of like your pieces that you have and some of the ones that you're coming out in the future with.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's a fun process, right? Because even in the beginning of the brand, I was trying to figure out what that identity would be. And I remember going to Mexico City and being super inspired by just the lush of greenery and the colors, and it just felt good. It felt warm, you know what I mean? And I think back to what Brainlo represents from a feeling standpoint, and it feels warm. It feels inviting. You know what I mean? It feels safe. You know what I mean? And I think that how we design is based on that pillars and those perspectives. And if I could put a year on it, I always say that is, it's the 70s and the 80s. I feel like the 70s and the 80s from a fashion perspective was so earthy, right? Earthy and fun and loving, you know what I mean? And it was so like you can tell that they, if you put a piece on it, maybe it wasn't as attractive, you'll still be attractive. You know what I mean? Because of how you look and how you took time to curate your fit and align to your body type, right? And I think that's something that we want to focus on as we evolve, right? Getting people to see value. And it's something I'm really thinking about right now that I'm talking is that, getting people to see value in understanding your body type and how your fit align to how you look, right? And if you want to change your look, you need to get in the gym. You know what I'm saying? But if you're not in that space just yet, there's ways to make yourself look a certain way by the fit of your clothes, right? So yeah, man, the 70s and the 80s, man, is so much inspiration in that. If you look at our clothes and the color palettes and the art, I wanted to be art. I wanted to feel like art. I wanted to be something that stops someone and say, "Hey, let me read this." And even if it's something that doesn't have our brand name on it, that it tells a story. Like we have this sweater that's called the Baptist sweater, and it's just amazing because it just pays homage to beautiful black women and how they are a pillar to us as men and women and anybody, right, that pays attention to the elders, right? Women play a very powerful role in guiding you down a path or guiding you down your journey, like from your mothers to your wives or wherever that woman that may be in your life. And I look back and, in the past, how or women were the ones that played a role in guiding you, right? But also getting you to see more calmly of what's in front of you. You know what I mean? And for me and for us at the brand, we're a small team. It's always thinking about how we can make sure that our story is very clear. Our first collection was called Love You, but now we're kind of going into more of a, how do you love yourself? What does that look like? What is romantic? What does me and romantic with yourself looks like? Right? How do you date yourself? You know what I mean? How do you date people around you? Not in a you can date someone in none sexual way. You know what I mean? How do you get to know people and get to know people on a stronger level? Like how do you continue to evolve with someone? Your family, your friends around you. You know what I mean? So it's very, very fun to think through like how we want to tell our stories, right? And man, like I said, I'm very inspired by just pieces from the 70s and the 80s. So as you guys see us evolve, you will see a lot of pieces from you'll see some similarities to the 80s and the 70s, you know what I mean, and how the fits look and just the swag, man. I think it's just super fly when you see a tracksuit from the 80s with the flares at the bottom. You know what I mean? Not everybody is accustomed to that style. So for us, like I like to merge both to give you a hybrid of it. Like for example, one of our best selling t-shirts right now, a Love You t-shirt, is people ask, is it a mock? Is it a mock t-shirt? It's not a mock t-shirt. Crop, I'm sorry, but crop. It's between a crop and a regular, where it gives you that tailored feel to it, but it still gives you a little trendiness, but it still feels regular at the same time. You know what I mean? So just and also challenging myself. You know what I mean? Like I come from a hat designing background, so I'm going into a more apparel, contemporary style. You know what I mean? So challenging myself to understand cuts and um, feels and fabrics and alignments that make the fat fit look the best, and also pulling from my own what I love as well. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest with me, be honest with you, bro. Like I'm not making anything different for anybody. I'm in a space where it's just like if you're gonna take the brand, taking the brand. Now, what we will do, we'll work with the retailer and curate a certain collection, a certain colorway for a particular retailer that's different from us and another retailer, so that there's full alignment from a business perspective, right? We used to do this with our brands. Like we'll curate a certain hat collection for Nordstrom's versus Saks and versus Neiman Marcus. When we went into Neiman Marcus, we had a whole different collection that wasn't in our store on our website. It wasn't in Nordstrom's. You know what I mean? So doing things like that creates exclusivity, right, for the retailer, like a Nordstrom's or a um, um Bloomingdale's, right? To make sure that you're successful. I think when you think about long term success, is that you just got to make sure that you go in it with an open mind, right? Because at the end of the day, they're gonna want something from you, but you kind of have to bring them back because at the end of the day, it's just like even though you want to be that All Saint or that Supreme brand or that big brand, you're not there just yet. And I think there's nothing wrong being honest with yourself, right? And saying, hey, like we don't want to come in too strong. We want to come in just enough to give the customer at Bloomingdale's or Saks or whatever enough to want more, right? And as we grow and as we scale, we add more, we add more, we add more. So we can gradually scale and become bigger while we're doing our work on the back end, right? Increasing awareness, increasing the brand, leveraging the money that we're getting from the retailers to reinvest back into PR and more product or opportunities and things of that nature, right? Full circle moment. You can leverage the money that you're getting from your retailers to kind of help market and push yourself so that you can. There's more awareness coming back to you. So now people are asking, where can I get your product if they don't see it on the website? So now they're going to Bloomingdale's and saying, oh, where I saw this shirt. You ain't got that on the site, man. I'm gonna pick that up. But I still need the shirt that you got on your site. So it just creates that bounce. You know what I'm saying? It's like ping pong. Like I'm bouncing with you. You know what I mean? Like we're mirroring each other to make sure that we both win. Because at the end of the day, the retailer has a win. They're not selling product, then they're not gonna keep you around as a business. I can't cry and say I'm a black business and all these different things to keep them in. No, you gotta make sure you do, but you gotta also gotta put your foot down in the beginning because if you come in too hot, ain't nowhere to go. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, I think that's our relationship right now as far as what our strategy looks like when it comes to retail and kind of how we navigate it. We want to think about different ways of growing with a retailer, but also getting to understand like, hey, it's a benefit to you as well. We will do the work on our end. We will make sure that we increase awareness and brand awareness and make sure we're doing that, right? So that it can drive more sales to you guys. But we also need you to work with us, right? Hey, like if you're normally taking in 15 pieces of assortment of 15 pieces, we may not be ready for that. Let's do six, let's do seven, let's do eight. Let's work together to find that happy medium where we know that we understand that you want to look a certain way on the floor. Completely understand that. Like that's based on you guys' guidelines, but also understand too is that we don't want it to move too fast. And I know this. I've done this before, and I know how it can work to our benefit if we slowly scale up and evolve.
Yeah, I think the design process is like so. it's so fun, but it's like stressful at the same time because you got to think about like who your audience is, and I think it's so interesting. Like the thing that you're talking about is something that I'm working on as well, right? Where we have like t-shirts, and t-shirts are pretty unisex for it. However, a t-shirt is also not very unisex when you think about it. So it's like
Right.
the size of a t-shirt can vary depending on like the waist, and like the waist could be like the last thing people think about as far as a t-shirt, but then like when you're pulling over the shirt, is it going to sit above the belt line, or is it going to go past the belt line? Is it going to go into like the bust region? Like how's that going to affect it from like the stitching to make the shirt like tighter and everything like that? But it sounds like the things that you're designing are paying homage to like your life experiences, the things that you're growing around, but it's also paying homage to like points in time. And I think the points in time, like that feeling of like when you just took like that pause of like when you were just describing like the 70s, it's like it's just so much, like it's a feeling, you know what I'm saying? Like and that's how it was, where it's like people were wearing some shit that I'd be like, oh, I didn't know that you could wear that, like that tie as a hat. But it's like it works. It works in that. And I think when you see people like artists like Doechii, it's like the things that she's wearing is like she's getting the fits off. She's getting the fits off is because it's just like that feeling and like that self expression and that emotion. But it also goes back to like the overall like life cycle of a product. And when I was growing up as a kid, I just remember like my brother was like very big on like a fresh tea Friday. Every Friday he would go to like the liquor store and he would get a fresh white tea from the liquor store. And I just know like the life cycle of those like white teas. I hate to see him coming because he would go and get like a fresh white tea, wear it, and it'd have like the little creases from it being folded, and then he wear it fresh out the pack,
Or
and it like
fresh
fit.
pair of forces,
Yeah, the fresh forces. He had everything like ready to go, and I'd be like, all right, cool. But the life cycle was you got the t-shirt, you wear the t-shirt however you feel like it. You could go and like it could be like a fresh crisp tee for like a date, but then at the end of the day, like once you wear that shirt, it's like it starts turning yellow, and like those, then it goes from being like the t-shirt to the undershirt. Now the
Right.
t-shirt is like the undershirt, and then when it's like the undershirt is too much, then it's the tank top. Like that actual like t-shirt has like cut into that.
So for us, we want to work on keeping that white shirt, the main shirt. You know, and how
Yeah.
do we curate the best white T-shirt for you, where
Yeah. Yeah.
you wash it, you love it, still consistent days.
Yeah, and like that experience for the white tee that he was wearing was like it was more so like you buy it to destroy it. It's worn to destroy, but it's not meant to build with quality. It's like it's a good cut, and I think that the cut eventually, like depending on like the fabrics on it, right? Like the fabrics weren't anything crazy. Like they were in bulks and packs, and you could get them at every local store. But you knew like different brands had different ones, where there was like the flare of the sleeves and stuff, and like then it goes too much up, so you may
Right,
not want to wear that anymore. And I think fashion is really fun now because like you have these shirts that have fabric that's already pre-shrunk, so you don't have to worry about it like turning into like a baby tee after wearing it a couple times and washing it. The cut of it is there. It might already have a wash on like the prints on it, so like the screen print is no longer like it's not peeling or it's not crumbling or cracking and stuff on it. The way it's cured is like so intentional that it just goes into the fact of like the investment piece of it, where like the amount of times that people would wear those like white tees, you might as well have bought this other tee because it would sustain the same level of quality. And then when you no longer want it, it's
and
because
you pay the same amount.
yeah, you have the same amount of life cycle of it. The product is there, the message is there, and that affinity to it, it now becomes like a childhood blanket. Like the childhood blanket to you is like the one that is like it doesn't matter the condition, even though the condition is there, but now it's actually generational and you can pass it down and stuff like that. So I
Right,
think it's really cool that when you start your design homage of the past, but it's in the present for the future to
right.
continue to like lead the generations of that. So I think that that's like so dope that you're really designing that. So it is really cool. And then especially like curating these retail collections, right? Like I completely get it. We've got like 285 SKUs, and like if I went to like
Gosh,
a
how many?
company, 285. Yeah, so like going to a brand and giving them a lookbook, I submitted them and nobody's buying anything. I was like, when I thought about it, somebody was like, "Well, what the hell do you mean you got 285 products on here?" Like to look at it instead of it being like, "All right, here's the curated collection and
Right,
assortment." that you have to take the step back of saying like, who is this for? And like to me, it's like I've built out these different like affinities and like attachments to these different designs that now I'm able to like break down and say like, of these 285, 15 fit here, 50 fit here,
Right.
5 fit here, 2 fit here. And how are we gonna like for the future collections tie back into the past instead of it being like that was a learning period, those colors don't make sense, how can they make sense, and how
Right.
are you doing that from it? So I think it's really cool
Right.
seeing that brand alignment and like companies fall into place for that. I think that the conversation we had earlier about like true boycotting is that there's a luxury in having your own pieces and having a authoritative position in terms of like the designs you control, because like you don't have to face that. If like a company is getting like ostracized because of lack of values, you get to know directly where the values are without it being like a publicized thing ahead of time, and you get to have more
Right.
control over that. So that's going to be like the ability to like control and like take that to wherever you are. So I think that that's really cool that you do that. But what I wanted to do was seeing how that's the past, present, and future. I want to close it out with seeing to you is where do you see yourself now that you have created the brand in the past based on your previous experience to where it is today? Where do you see yourself today? And where do you want to take yourself and your brand in the future on what that reality in full circle why is now?
Yeah, man. Man, I think we are where we're supposed to be right now. Right. I think we're in a space where we're learning, we're understanding, we're putting ourselves in this space to learn and grow and figure out how do we build this brand that we think can be so much more than what it is right now. I literally was talking to my business manager today. It's just like we have something special, like we truly do. And I think the first step for us is let's get this product to be clean. Let's figure out how do we get there. You know what I mean? And then from there, let's figure out how do we connect the dots, right? I told her we have the beginning and we have the end. We know where we are right now. We know where we want to go. We're missing the piece in the middle, right? So for how we talked about earlier around throwing things at the dark, testing different ideas, how do we want to make impact, what that looks like for us as a brand. We realize that it starts with the product. We want to make sure that our customers are getting the cleanest product, and I think that that starts with us starting to do research in now. And I'll be honest, we're new to this. Like we've never really done sustainable before. We're gonna teach ourselves. We're gonna teach ourselves what it looks like. We're gonna bring in talk to some experts, really research and take time. And it's still early for us. Like we're not even 2 years old yet. We've had a lot of success within the first year and a half and change. So it was overly grateful that people are online into our brand and they really are rocking with us. You know what I mean? Especially, man, I'm overly grateful because I didn't even know where I was gonna be in a couple of years. You know what I mean? So it brings me so much joy that people see value in what we're building, and uh, it's it gets me. I get a little emotional because it's like, man, people don't understand like where I came from. You know what I mean? And it's always a joy to see people take to honestly buy what you have created out your mind. You know what I mean? I say all the time, like God gave me this idea. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's only it's only up to me to take it further. You know what I mean? And really make sure that uh we are giving people a different perspective of how they should view themselves. You know what I mean? And I've had people tell me how I should view myself in a positive way that got me past my own hurdles. You know what I mean? So I could be, you'll be surprised how many people are struggling in the world. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't have community, don't have family, don't have anybody. You know what I mean? So if we can be a brand that is just a breath of fresh air for them, to say, hey, they see something that we have created. They see the campaign that we created that was different. It was impactful. It was dope. It was cool. It was fly. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where we win. You know what I mean? And I think for us, it's not putting ourselves in a box, regardless of when people, because at the end of the day, people are not going to agree with us. People are not going to support us, and that's okay. You know what I mean? But our job, when people start to say, oh man, it's just fire, it's just dope, like that's when we win. That's when we won. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to get better every single day. Like what we preach is what we're trying to do in real time. You know what I mean? So from us working on our product, figuring out how to make that better, figuring out how to find the best materials for our customers, from figuring out how we want to program, how we want to partner. You know what I mean? So if you're anybody that's out there that listen to the thing, if you want to work, want to make impact, we're here. You know what I mean? We just want to make impact the best way we can. And we know that we know we have the opportunity to change this landscape of how people see themselves. You know what I mean? And I think it's powerful when you realize I don't have to listen to everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like once you realize that, that's when you say the matrix, that's when you cracked it open. You know what I mean? I don't care about what nobody else think about me. I really don't. You know what I mean? So it's just like either you're gonna support it or you don't. It's fine. But you will eventually. You know what I mean? Because it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be unfortunately you're gonna follow the trend. That's okay. But that's life. Like everybody is not the leader. That's how it works. You know what I mean? We are attracting the leaders. That's our customer. Our customers are the leaders, are the ones that are on the journey or trying to get there, and trying to receive the information to help them get there. And they know that they're not perfect. They know they have more work to do. And the same thing with me. I know I have more work to do as a brand. We have so much more work to do, and just excited, man. You know what I mean? This is my second time around. I don't have no expectations, but I know that at the end of the day, we have something special, and I think that God is steering the ship. You know what I mean? And it's only right for me to take it above and beyond and really make sure that we're doing what we need to do on our end.
I love it. I love it. I'm really excited to see what you come out with. I'm excited to see the growth of it. I'm tuned into the podcast before it drops. I'm gonna be part of all of it. Everything you try to do, whether it's the store,
Uh,
whether it's the store, the shop, TV, everything you see, like just I'm very invested in it, and I figured that this would be like the best way to pilot everything off by talking to
oh, for
somebody who
sure.
I've just seen like every aspect of it from like
Grateful, man.
yeah, like it's just been so amazing. And then for those who are tuning in, if you haven't checked it out already, Archie's brand is brainlove.store.store, not .store.com. It's just brainlove.store. Get it right. And then check them out. Is there anything else that you want to plug or anything that you like people to see, check you out?
Yeah, of course. Just check us out on our website, www.brand.store. Follow us on Instagram, all platforms for official. Just watch out if you don't buy it right now. Let's just share our store, share our product with the community. That's all we can ask.
Yeah. Keep building, man. Thank you so much for tuning in, and can't wait to see what you do in the future, man.
Not for
Peace
sure.
out.
Thanks for having
Of
me.
course, man. See ya.